Daddy. The voice rang out like a bell across the grand lobby of the Reed Grand Hotel in downtown Chicago. Every knife and fork paused midair, and a subtle gasp swept through the room. Heads turned almost in unison toward the source. A little black girl, no more than 5 years old, stood near the marble staircase, her curls bouncing as she ran. Her eyes sparkled with mischief and joy, and her smile was unguarded. Jonathan Reed, dressed in his usual tailored charcoal suit, froze in the middle of signing a multi-million-dollar contract. His pen hovered above the paper. The word hit him harder than any market crash. "Daddy," she called again, louder, more certain. The room held its breath. She ran straight to him and wrapped her tiny arms around his leg, looking up with an innocent grin that stretched ear to ear. "Hi, Daddy," she said brightly. Jonathan looked down, startled. Something flickered in him. Her chin, the shape of her eyes, even the small dimple that formed when she smiled, it was like looking at a faded photograph of himself, but younger and softer. And as Jonathan stood there, motionless amid the buzz of the Grand Hotel, a quiet truth settled into his heart. Sometimes, the past doesn't knock, it walks right up, smiles, and calls you, Daddy. If this story moved you, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know where you're watching from, we'd love to hear from you. And if you want to follow more emotional and powerful stories like this, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss what's coming next. Someone in the crowd coughed awkwardly. Others stared, whispering among themselves. But Jonathan couldn't tear his gaze away. A moment later, a voice broke the silence. "Maya, sweetheart, what are you doing?" Maria Alvarez, dressed in her cleaning uniform, pushed her way through the crowd. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with horror. She quickly scooped the little girl up into her arms. "I am so sorry, Mr. Reed," she said breathlessly. "She must have seen your picture somewhere on the hotel magazine, maybe. Kids make silly connections. She meant no harm." Jonathan blinked. "Her name is Maya?" he asked, voice low. Maria nodded, avoiding his eyes. "Yes, she's 5. Grant, Jonathan's right-hand man for over a decade, stepped closer. He leaned in and whispered, "Sir, do you remember Denver? The charity gala 6 years ago. You drank more than usual. You blacked out in the hallway." His voice dropped lower. "She was the one who helped you to your suite." Jonathan's expression didn't change, but a shadow passed behind his eyes. He had long sought to uncover who had helped him that night. He had searched, asked quietly over the years, but no one ever confirmed anything. All he had found the next morning was a thin, gold necklace lying on the bed beside him. It had a tiny letter M on the pendant, just M, nothing more. He had kept it, quietly, unsure why. It now sat locked in his nightstand. Maria clutched Maya tighter, stepping back slowly. "We'll leave," she murmured. "I don't want any trouble. Please forgive her." Jonathan looked from mother to child. Maya had turned her head slightly, peeking at him over her mother's shoulder. She giggled softly, eyes gleaming. In that look, playful, curious, full of trust, Jonathan saw more than just resemblance. He saw memory, emotion, a connection that shouldn't have existed. "No," he said quietly. "Don't go. Take her to your room. I'll need to talk with you both later." Maria hesitated, then nodded. She left with Maya in her arms, disappearing down the hallway reserved for staff. Jonathan stood still, eyes fixed on where they had gone. Grant stepped up beside him. "You all right?" Jonathan didn't respond immediately. He turned toward the floor-to-ceiling windows, where the Chicago rain misted the glass in fine streaks. Behind him, the lobby resumed its rhythm, though voices still hummed with curiosity. He whispered more to himself than anyone. That necklace, that night, and somewhere in his chest, a storm was building questions, memories, and something deeper. Something that sounded suspiciously like hope. The elevator doors closed behind Jonathan with a soft mechanical chime. The penthouse suite greeted him in silence, dimly lit by the amber hues of early evening light seeping through the tall glass windows. He dropped his phone and wallet onto the marble counter with a thud, loosened his tie, and poured himself a scotch. No ice. He stood still for a moment, sipping slowly, the warmth of the liquor burning its way down, grounding him. But his mind wasn't here. It was 6 years ago in another hotel room, in another city, with a memory half erased but emotionally sharp. He crossed the room, opened the drawer of his bedside table, and took out the small velvet pouch he hadn't touched in years. Inside, the necklace remained exactly as he remembered it, delicate gold, the pendant shaped into the cursive letter M. It looked old, handmade perhaps, certainly not store-bought. He held it in his palm for a long time. The chain still smelled faintly of lavender and something else, something that reminded him of warmth on a cold night. He remembered waking up, confused, aching, alone, but the bed had been made. A blanket tucked over him gently, a faint impression of someone who had cared. And now, this child, this bright, lively little girl had burst into his carefully constructed life and torn open that long closed door. Jonathan pressed the intercom on the wall. "Grant, come up." 3 minutes later, the door opened, and Grant entered, still in his crisp navy blazer, tablet in hand. "I need everything on Maria Alvarez," Jonathan said, not turning around. "Background, employment records, family, medical, whatever you can get without breaking federal law." Grant raised an eyebrow but didn't ask why. "Understood." "And Grant," Jonathan added, voice lower, "be discreet." Grant gave a single nod and left. Jonathan returned to the window, necklace still in hand. The city spread out beneath him-gridded streets lit like veins, taxis blinking in motion. For a man who had spent his entire life building control over every variable, this girl, this possibility was chaos. And yet, he didn't want it to go away. Meanwhile, in the modest staff quarters on the 6th floor, Maria sat silently at the edge of her bed. Maya had long fallen asleep, curled against her favorite stuffed giraffe, her curls pressed against the worn pillowcase as she breathed softly, unaware of the tremble in her mother's hands. Maria stared at the old photograph on the nightstand she never showed anyone. It was creased from being folded so often. In it, she was 29, standing next to a holiday display, snowflakes falling behind her. Her face glowed with the quiet hope of someone who had just survived heartbreak, who had found brief comfort in a stranger's tenderness. She'd taken the photo the morning after Denver, after putting Jonathan Reed to bed and slipping away before sunrise. She never intended to keep the necklace, but it was all she had left from that night, and when Maya had started to grow inside her, it became a symbol, a secret promise. She thought he'd never remember, that he'd never know, until today. Maria rubbed her eyes and whispered to herself, "This wasn't supposed to happen like this." The next morning, Maya skipped down the hallway outside their room, clutching her drawing pad. She had no idea what kind of storm she'd stirred. Jonathan watched her from a distance, standing just beyond the staff hall, out of sight. He studied how she moved free, light-footed, with the same bounce in her step he used to have as a child, before the business deals and boardrooms took over. She paused at a small table near the lobby window, sat down, and began to draw. He approached slowly. "Hi there," he said gently. Maya looked up, not surprised. "Hi, Daddy," she said cheerfully. Jonathan knelt beside her. "You know, I'm not really your daddy." She cocked her head, unconvinced. "Mommy says people say silly things when they're scared." He chuckled despite himself. "Your mommy's smart." Maya reached into her pad and held up a drawing. It was a sketch of a tall man in a suit standing next to a little girl holding a balloon. The words, "My dad," were written in crayon above their heads. Jonathan blinked. "That's pretty good. I draw from real life," she said, proud. Maria arrived seconds later, clearly out of breath. "Maya, I told you not to run off." Jonathan stood, calmly. "It's okay. We were just talking." Maria's eyes flickered toward the drawing in Maya's hands, and her breath caught. She looked at Jonathan, expecting accusation, discomfort, even cruelty. But he surprised her. "I still have it," he said softly. "Have what?" He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the necklace. "This." Maria stared at it, her expression unreadable. Her hand instinctively went to her chest, where a chain used to hang years ago. She hadn't seen that necklace since that night. "I found it on my bed the morning after Denver," he said. "I never knew who left it. Until now." Silence. Maria finally met his eyes. "Why didn't you say anything back then?" "I didn't know who to say it to," he replied. "I didn't even know your name." She nodded slowly, processing. Her voice trembled. "I never wanted anything from you. I swear." "I believe you," he said. Maya tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Are you mad at him?" Maria crouched to her daughter's level. "No, baby. I'm just surprised." Jonathan looked at both of them, the woman who had quietly borne the burden of the truth, and the child who had shouted it out to the world without fear. "Will you come have breakfast with me?" he asked gently. "Just the three of us. No press, no business, just pancakes." Maria hesitated, then nodded. And for the first time in years, Jonathan Reed felt something shift inside him. Not strategy, not control, but something far older. Family. The private breakfast room on the 12th floor of the Reed Grand was quiet, tucked away from the chatter and buzz of the main dining area. A table for three had been set near the tall windows overlooking the lake. The scent of maple syrup and freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air. Jonathan arrived first, wearing a simple navy sweater and jeans, far from his usual suit of armor. He stood by the window, looking out over the lakefront, rehearsing what to say, unsure how much to ask. The door opened gently. Maria walked in with Maya holding her hand, her curls bouncing, a smile stretching across her round face. Jonathan turned, offering a soft smile of his own. "Good morning." "Good morning," Maria replied carefully. She looked uncomfortable, but determined. "Hi, Daddy," Maya chirped as she ran up and gave him a quick hug. Jonathan caught himself smiling again. She had no hesitation, no doubt, just faith. He gestured toward the table. "Let's eat before the pancakes get cold." The three of them sat down. Maya began coloring on her placemat with crayons the staff had thoughtfully provided. Maria stirred her coffee quietly, still not touching the food. Jonathan studied her for a moment. She looked tired not just physically, but with the weariness of someone who had carried too much alone for too long. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't either," Maria admitted. "But I figured, she deserves at least one breakfast like this." Maya looked up. "This is the best day ever." Maria smiled, then quickly hid it behind her cup. Jonathan leaned in slightly. "I need to ask something. That night, in Denver, you didn't say anything. You left." "I didn't want to complicate your life," Maria replied, voice steady. "You were drunk. I helped you to bed. That's all. I didn't expect anything. I didn't plan anything. But then I found out I was pregnant, and I couldn't find a way to tell you without it sounding like I had some kind of agenda." Jonathan's fingers tapped gently against his cup. "You never even tried?" "I wrote a letter once," Maria said quietly. "Never sent it. I saw you on the cover of Forbes and figured, why would you believe me?" He leaned back, exhaling. "You were right. I probably wouldn't have." Back then, he looked at Maya, who was now trying to balance a piece of pancake on her fork like a sword. "But now, it's different." Maria folded her hands. "So what do you want, Jonathan? Legally? Financially? Emotionally?" "I need to know." Jonathan paused. He hadn't figured that out entirely himself, but he knew one thing: he didn't want to walk away. "Not now. I want time," he said finally, "to get to know her, to understand what I missed. I don't want to take her from you. I want to be part of her world." Maria studied him carefully. "She's not a headline or a press moment." "I know," he replied. "She's a person, your daughter, maybe mine, and I need to earn the right to say that." Maria didn't respond, but she didn't push away either. After breakfast, Maya begged to show Jonathan her drawings. They walked together toward the garden terrace while Maria followed quietly behind. "This one is a fairy castle," Maya announced, flipping the page. "And this one is me and Mommy at the park. And this," she paused, showing a sketch of a tall man in a suit holding a girl's hand. "This is you and me, from yesterday." Jonathan swallowed hard. The drawing was crude, sure, but the expression on the man's face was unmistakable. It was the same one he'd seen in the mirror this morning. Hope, mixed with fear. "Can I ask you something?" he said softly, kneeling beside her. "Why did you call me Daddy?" Maya looked at him with wide eyes. "Because you looked like me. And Mommy said my daddy was kind and smart and helped people. And you looked lonely." He blinked. "Lonely?" "Yeah, like your eyes were looking for someone," she said, matter of fact. Jonathan stood slowly, moved by the strange wisdom of her answer. Back inside the suite, Maria sat on the edge of the couch. Jonathan approached her. "There's something else," he said. "I want to do a paternity test. Not because I doubt you, but because it's what needs to happen so we both know, legally and otherwise." Maria nodded. "That's fair. No lawyers yet? No press. Just the three of us, quietly." "Agreed." A knock at the door interrupted them. Grant stepped in with a folder in his hand. Jonathan nodded, motioning him forward. "You asked for her file," Grant said carefully, glancing at Maria. "Should I?" "You can leave it," Jonathan replied. "Thanks, Grant." As Grant left, Jonathan hesitated, then handed the folder to Maria. "I think you should see what people in power can find, just so you know the kind of world I come from." Maria opened the folder slowly. It contained not only her employment history but also a scan of a parking ticket from 6 years ago in Denver dated the very night they met. "You had someone trace this?" "Yes. I needed to be sure it wasn't just a feeling," Jonathan said. Maria closed the folder and looked at him. "You're thorough." "It's a habit," he said. "But I'm learning that, sometimes, the heart knows before the mind catches up." She didn't smile, but something in her expression softened. "You've got a lot to learn about parenting." "I know," he said. "But I've got the best teacher sitting in that chair coloring a giraffe purple." Maria chuckled despite herself. "She thinks giraffes would look better in lavender." "Honestly," Jonathan said, glancing back at Maya, "she might be right." That night, as Maria tucked Maya into bed, the little girl whispered, "Is he really my daddy?" Maria paused. "We'll find out soon, but no matter what, he's someone who cares." Maya nodded, satisfied, and drifted to sleep. Across the hotel, Jonathan sat alone again, holding the necklace, watching the rain tap against the glass. The storm inside him hadn't calmed, but it had changed. It was no longer just confusion. It was the beginning of something unfamiliar but welcome. Connection. Purpose. A chance to rewrite a part of himself he thought long lost. And outside, in the quiet hum of the city, a new day waited to begin. The morning sun broke gently over Chicago, casting a golden hue over the city's steel and glass. From the 13th floor of the Reed Grand, the skyline shimmered like a promise. Jonathan sat at his desk in his private office suite, fingers steepled beneath his chin. On the polished mahogany surface before him was a sealed envelope. City answers. The paternity test results had arrived earlier than expected. Everything was quiet in the room, save for the faint ticking of the antique clock by the window and the distant hum of city traffic. He stared at the envelope for a moment longer before tearing it open. Positive. There it was, in bold type, clinical and unflinching. Jonathan Reed, 99.9% probability of paternity. He let out a long breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Relief washed over him, relief, and a pang of regret. Regret for 5 years he hadn't known her, hadn't been there for birthdays, fevers, or first words. Yet somehow, that little girl had seen something in him, trusted him. He reached for his phone and dialed. "Maria," he said once she answered, "can you come up? And bring Maya." Maria didn't say much when she stepped into the suite. She'd expected this, braced herself for it. She held Maya's hand tightly, her thumb brushing the child's knuckles like a silent reassurance. Jonathan met them with a look neither stern nor soft, just steady. "It's confirmed," he said gently. "Maya's mine." Maria nodded. She had expected those words, yet hearing them out loud still hit like a wave. "All right, I'd like to talk about what comes next," he said, not as a CEO, but as her father, and someone who owes both of you a great deal. They sat, the three of them, on the suite sofa. Maya, as usual, found her comfort quickly. She climbed up next to Jonathan and handed him her drawing from that morning. It was a family, 3 stick figures holding hands. Above it, she'd written, "My home," in purple crayon. Jonathan blinked hard. Maria watched them quietly. There was a gentle distance in her gazanot distrust, but a woman who'd spent years building walls for survival. "I'm not trying to upend your life," he said to her, "but I'd like to be involved. In any way you're comfortable with." Maria took a deep breath. "She's happy now. That matters most. And I want to keep it that way," he said. "No sudden moves, no legal threats, no headlines. Just More mornings like this, maybe. Meals, walks, time. Maria tilted her head. Time is earned, Jonathan, not given. I know, he said. They talked a little longer. Simple things. Favorite foods, school schedules, Maya's obsession with giraffes and dislike for eggs. Each word was a step forward. Small, careful, but real. But peace, like most things in Jonathan's world, was never without shadows. Downstairs, in the polished hallways of the corporate wing, whispers had begun to rise. An assistant had seen Maya being ushered into the private elevator. A concierge mentioned a little girl hugging Mr. Reed at breakfast. And one overly curious member of the PR team had started piecing together timelines. Edward Kane, the head of public affairs, was not known for subtlety. He marched into Grant's office without knocking. I need clarity, he barked. Is Mr. Reed harboring an illegitimate child with a cleaning staff member? Grant looked up from his tablet, calm as ever. That's an absurd accusation. Absurd? Or potentially scandalous? Do you know what kind of media storm this could cause if it gets out before we control the narrative? Grant folded his hands. You're assuming there's something to control. Edward snorted. Come on, Grant. I know discretion is your job, but mine is to anticipate risk. And this is a fire waiting to ignite. Grant stood slowly. Let me be very clear, Edward. If you breathe one word of speculation before Mr. Reed decides how to proceed, you'll be out of here before your press badge stops swinging. Edward narrowed his eyes. So it's true. Grant said nothing. But silence, when offered with confidence, was answer enough. That evening, Maria returned to her modest staff room to find a typed envelope slid beneath her door. Inside was a simple note. Eyes are watching. You'd be wise to keep your distance. She read it 3 times, her pulse rising with each word. Maya was humming softly in the corner, building a paper crown, blissfully unaware. Maria crushed the note in her hand. Later that night, she stood by the laundry chute, where cell reception was weakest. She called Jonathan. I need to talk, she whispered. Somebody knows. There was a pause on the other end. I'll be there in 10, Jonathan said. They met in the garden, under the warm halo of a street lamp. The moon hovered low over the skyline, silver and knowing. Maria handed him the note. His jaw tightened as he read. I won't let anyone threaten you, he said. This is your world, she replied. Not mine. People like me don't survive it without scars. Jonathan looked at her, really looked. She wasn't just a woman who had raised his daughter in silence. She was someone who had carried the weight of both love and fear in equal measure, and never asked for a thing in return. Then let me share the burden now, he said. You and Maya don't have to do this alone anymore. Maria hesitated. Then she nodded once. Small, but enough. Above them, the moonlight framed them like a silent witness. Below, the city moved on, unaware that something had shifted not just between 2 people, but within the quiet gears of a long-hidden truth. And somewhere in the hotel, Maya slept soundly, her paper crown resting beside her, pillow ready for a kingdom she didn't know she already ruled. The following morning, Jonathan stood at the edge of the rooftop terrace, coffee in hand, eyes locked on the glimmering Chicago skyline. The note Maria had shown him still burned in the pocket of his jacket, heavier than it should have been for a piece of paper. The city had always felt like his predictable, mapped, responsive to his moves. But now, something was off. A fracture, quiet but undeniable. Behind him, Grant stepped out into the chill air, holding a slim folder. Security ran a check, Grant said. The envelope was typed on a standard inkjet. No fingerprints. No cameras caught the drop-off. Whoever did this knew the blind spots. Jonathan nodded without turning. Someone inside. Likely, Grant agreed, though PR hasn't leaked anything yet, but they're circling. Jonathan finally turned around, his face unreadable. Set up a meeting, just the executive team. I want to be the one to tell Thiemann my terms. Grant hesitated. Are you sure? Once it's out, you can't take it back. I'm not hiding Maya, Jonathan said firmly. Not from the board, not from the press, not from the damn world. He paused, then added, more quietly, she called me daddy, in front of everyone. And for once in my life, I didn't care who was watching. Meanwhile, Maria sat on the bench outside Maya's kindergarten class, hands clenched around her travel mug. The playground buzzed with the sound of laughter and small feet pounding the pavement. Maya, in her lavender jacket, ran in circles with two other girls, her voice floating on the wind. "Is she yours?" The question came from a woman seated beside her blonde. Expensive perfume, the kind of effortless polish Maria had always found impossible to replicate. "Yes," Maria said simply. "She's adorable," the woman smiled. "But she doesn't look like you." Maria stiffened. "That's because she looks like her father." The woman's smile didn't falter, but her eyes flickered with interest. "Ah, and is her father involved?" Maria stood. "He is now." She walked away before the conversation could stretch into something colder, uglier. At the Reed Grand, the executive conference room was filled with the usual suspects, department heads, attorneys, PR specialists. Jonathan stood at the head of the table, the same place he had commanded for nearly 2 decades. Only this time, he wasn't discussing numbers or expansions. He was about to speak as a manot, a CEO. "I'm going to be brief," he began. "5 years ago, during a company event, I had a personal encounter with a staff member. No scandal, no coercion. Just a mistake neither of us expected would lead to something lasting." The room was still, not tense, just breathless. Jonathan continued. "Her name is Maria Alvarez. She works here, and she raised a daughter on her own. That daughter, Maya, is mine." Edward Kane shifted in his seat, face carefully blank. "Does this affect our public image?" Jonathan didn't flinch. "Only if we handle it badly, which we won't." Another voice, Susan, head of HR, spoke up. "Maria has always been a model employee, quiet, professional. She stayed quiet to protect her child," Jonathan said. "To protect me too, in a way." Grant stepped forward. "Moving forward, Mr. Reed will be taking a more active role in the child's life. Privately, there's no legal contest, no financial dispute. This is a matter of family." There was a long silence. Then Edward said, "So, are we issuing a statement?" "No," Jonathan said. "We're living our truth. Let the tabloids chase fiction. We don't need to hand them the script." That night, Maria found a new envelope beneath her door, but this one was different. It wasn't typed. It was handwritten, cursive, in black ink. "He may protect you now, but loyalty fades, and accidents happen." Her heart dropped. This wasn't just gossip anymore. This was a threat. She took the note to Jonathan immediately. He read it twice, then folded it without a word. "We're moving you," he said. "Tonight." "I can't just disappear," Maria protested. "Maya has school. She'll be safer with private tutors. Just until we find out who's behind this. I don't want her to live like she's in hiding." Jonathan looked at her. "Then let me fix it. Let me protect her." For a moment, Maria saw the man he could be. Not the billionaire with the skyscraper view, but the father who had missed too much and wanted to catch up before it was too late. "All right," she said, "but promise me no more secrets." "No more," he whispered. Later that night, after Maya had fallen asleep in their temporary suite on the top floor, Jonathan sat with Maria on the balcony, the city lights stretching like veins beneath them. "She thinks you hung the moon," Maria said softly. Jonathan glanced at the sleeping child through the window. "I think she's the one lighting up my sky." Maria chuckled, then grew serious. "You're not afraid?" "I'm terrified," Jonathan admitted. "But for once, I think that's a good thing." Maria leaned her head against the railing. "What if this doesn't work? What if the world tears this apart? Then we build something stronger," he said. "Something they can't shake." A pause. "Do you remember anything else from that night in Denver?" she asked. Jonathan closed his eyes. "I remember a warm hand on my shoulder, a blanket, and the scent of lavender. I remember someone caring when they didn't have to." Maria smiled barely. "That was me." "I know that now," he whispered. And in the distance, the skyline stood steady, a silent witness to the small, fragile, and stubborn beginnings of a family not born perfect but chosen. The next morning, a gray drizzle settled over the city, cloaking the Reed Grand's windows in a silvery mist. Inside the hotel's upper executive floor, tension hung just as heavily. In a room filled with polished surfaces and muted tones, Edward Kane met with 2 men from an external firm, crisis management consultants. He paced near the window, jaw tight. "He's made this personal," he muttered. Reed thinks he can carry a scandal on the back of a family fairy tale. One of the consultants, a lean man with sharp glasses, replied, "So far, there's no leak, but the longer he stays silent publicly, the more the press speculates." Edward scoffed. "And the more they speculate, the more power that woman gains." The second man frowned. "You're not suggesting. I'm saying we need a contingency," Edward interrupted. "If this spirals, the board needs to consider alternative leadership. Our stockholders care about stability, not sentiment." The other men exchanged glances. A silent understanding passed between them. This was no longer just a story of unexpected paternity, it was a matter of control. Meanwhile, across town, Maria and Maya sat in a warm, book-lined office filled with soft light and the scent of lemon tea. The woman across from them, Dr. Evelyn Monroe, specialized in family counseling. Jonathan had arranged the appointment without pressure, but with hope. "I just want to make sure we're all grounded," he'd told Maria. "For Maya's sake." Dr. Monroe leaned forward, her voice gentle. "Maya, can you tell me how you feel when you're with Jonathan?" Maya swung her legs, then smiled. "I like when he reads the giraffe books with voices. He talks like a giraffe would talk." Maria raised an eyebrow, surprised. Dr. Monroe smiled warmly. "That sounds fun. Do you feel safe with him?" Maya nodded, then added, "He listens. Like really listens." Maria's eyes softened. Later, while Maya colored quietly in the corner, Dr. Monroe addressed Maria privately. "She's adjusted well to having him around. But children that age pick up on tension even if they can't articulate it." Maria folded her arms. "She doesn't know we're getting threats." "No," Dr. Monroe said. "But she knows you're watching doors more closely. You're more alert, a little distracted." Maria exhaled. "I don't know how to make her world feel normal when mine hasn't been for years." The therapist reached across the desk. "Normal doesn't mean perfect. It means present. She knows you're there. And now, she's learning that he is, too." That night, Jonathan invited Maria and Maya to dinner in the rooftop greenhouse, an event space rarely used, transformed into a quiet oasis. Lanterns glowed among the ivy, and the air smelled of fresh herbs and earth. Maya ran among the planters, pretending to be a jungle explorer. Jonathan watched her, laughter soft in his chest. Maria sipped from her wine glass. "This is beautiful. Unexpected." He nodded. "She deserves magic. And so do you." Maria's smile was hesitant but real. "You know this won't last, right? Someone will talk. The press will dig. You'll get buried in half-truths." "I've been buried in worse," Jonathan replied. "What matters is what I do next." She watched him. "And what is that?" He looked at her directly. "I make this real. I protect it. I learn what it means to be a father and maybe, just maybe, something more." Before she could respond, Grant appeared in the doorway, face tight. "Sorry to interrupt," he said. "We have a problem." Jonathan excused himself and stepped aside with Grant. "What is it?" "Someone on the board leaked," Grant said grimly. A freelance blogger posted an unconfirmed story. Hotel magnate's secret daughter discovered in staff quarters. Jonathan swore under his breath. "It hasn't gone viral yet," Grant added, "but it's only a matter of time." Jonathan turned to glance at Maria, who was helping Maya pick basil leaves. The calm of the moment now felt like a lie. "Prepare a statement," Jonathan said, "and get Edward in my office first thing tomorrow. If he's involved, I want to know." Later that night, Maria stood at the suite's window, watching the lights flicker below. Jonathan joined her, slipping a blanket over her shoulders. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "You trusted me. I should have seen this coming." She shook her head. "It's not your fault. People don't know how to mind their own lives. But you and Maya, you shouldn't have to live in someone else's headlines." Maria looked at him. "We've lived in shadows for 5 years. But she's not afraid. She's proud to call you Daddy. Maybe it's time the world learns why." Jonathan looked down at her hand resting on the windowsill. He gently covered it with his. "I'll handle it," he said. "But I need to know if things get worse. Will you stand with me?" She hesitated. Then, slowly, she turned her hand upward and squeezed his fingers. "I already am," she whispered. And for the first time in years, Jonathan Reed didn't feel like he was standing alone at the top of his empire. He felt like a man building something that could finally last. Something rooted in more than steel and profit. Something real. By sunrise, the story had reached national traction. What began as a single blog post had been picked up by 2 tabloid sites overnight. "Billionaire hotel owner has secret daughter with housekeeper," blared the headline on one. Beneath it was a grainy, zoomed-in photo of Jonathan standing with Maria and Maya near the hotel garden. It wasn't damning, not yet, but the whispers had evolved into questions, and questions demanded answers. Jonathan stared at the screen in his office, jaw tight. The blinds were drawn, lights dim. He had always known this moment might come, but not so soon and not like this. Grant stood across the desk, arms folded. "The Wall Street Journal's calling for comment," he said. "So are CBS and the Chicago Tribune." "Don't answer yet," Jonathan said. "Not until I talk to Edward." Grant nodded. "He'll be here any minute." A knock came at the door. Edward Kane stepped in, pressed, poised, as if the day's headlines hadn't implicated him at all. Jonathan didn't stand. He simply slid the tabloid printout across the desk. "You leaked this." "I did no such thing," Edward said smoothly. "Though I must admit, it was only a matter of time before someone did." Jonathan narrowed his eyes. "Don't play the innocent. That photo came from our internal system. There's only a handful of people with access." "And yet," Edward said, voice dry, "you didn't password, protect the folder." Jonathan rose slowly. "If you ever use my family, my daughter as a tool again, you'll be escorted out of this building with nothing but your desk plant." Edward smirked. "Be careful, Jonathan. The board is already nervous. They may love a father figure, but they hate unpredictability more." Jonathan walked around the desk and stood toe-to-toe with him. "Let me make this clear. I built this company from a seed in a shared office. I've walked through fire to make it what it is. If they want to challenge me, fine. But I won't back down from being a father." Edward gave a short nod, then left. Grant closed the door behind him. "We're going to need to get ahead of this." Jonathan's shoulders fell slightly. "I know." At the suite, Maria sat on the edge of the couch, phone in hand. A friend from church had sent her a screenshot. Her name, along with Maya's, was now floating through gossip circles like a scent in the wind. She scrolled through comments, her throat tightening with each one. Gold digger. She planned this. Another woman playing the long game. She turned off the phone and tossed it aside. Maya was in the bedroom, blissfully unaware, painting watercolor clouds. Maria closed her eyes, leaned her head back against the couch. For years she had kept herself invisible, safe, and now the world had decided to shine a spotlight with no warning, no mercy. A knock. She opened the door to find Jonathan, wearing the same expression she had seen only once before the day he learned Maya was his, part hurt, part guilt, and mostly protectiveness. "It started," she said, stepping back to let him in. "I know," he said. "I talked to Edward. He admitted it? He was smug enough to make it clear." Maria nodded. "So what now?" Jonathan sat beside her. "We respond, with dignity, truth, but on our terms." She looked at him skeptically. "The public eats stories like ours alive, especially mine. Then we change the narrative," he said. "You're not a scandal, Maria. You're the mother of my daughter. You're a woman who raised her with grace and strength while I was too blind to see." Maria's eyes shimmered. "I don't want her growing up thinking she was a mistake." Jonathan took her hand. "She wasn't. She's a miracle." That afternoon, Jonathan summoned his media advisor, a woman named Claudia Del Rey, who had worked on political campaigns and high-profile corporate recoveries. She wore no-nonsense heels and a steel gray suit, her expression a mix of curiosity and calculation. "You're not going to spin this," Jonathan told her flatly. "You're going to help me say the truth. Clean, direct, no denial, no deflection." Claudia arched an eyebrow. "Are you prepared for the consequences?" "More than ever." "Huh." They drafted a statement together. Jonathan wrote most of it himself, fingers flying over the keys as if exercising something buried for years. He would release it in a video. No press conference, no fancy backdrop, just him, a father, speaking as plainly as he knew how. By 6 p.m., the video was live on the hotel's website and Jonathan's verified social platforms. In it, He sat alone in a chair, a single soft light behind him. "My name is Jonathan Reed," he began, "and I've spent most of my life building a company, building an image. But I'm here today to talk about something more important, family." He spoke of Maria, of that night in Denver, of the years he didn't know Maya existed, and the moments he's now fighting not to miss. "This is not a scandal," he said. "This is a second chance, and I intend to honor it, not hide it." The video went viral within hours. Maria sat in bed that night, laptop on her knees, watching the video for the third time. Jonathan had never looked more vulnerable, more real. Maya was asleep beside her, arms wrapped around her lavender giraffe. Maria stroked her daughter's hair gently. "He did it," she whispered. He stood up. The next morning, the response was mixed but not cruel. Headlines shifted. "Reed owns up. This is a second chance." Blogs that had once speculated now praised his candor. Talk shows dissected his statement with cautious optimism. And in the quiet corners of the internet, comments began to change. "That little girl is lucky. This might be the realest thing I've seen from a billionaire." Even Edward, sitting behind his desk, had to admit the tide had turned. But in the shadowy parts of the company places, even Grant hadn't mapped someone watched from a distance. A former partner, a silent investor, someone who hadn't liked Jonathan's rise or his new vulnerabilities. "Now we know where to press," he muttered to himself, folding the printed transcript of the video. The story wasn't over. It was just getting started. It was just past midnight when the call came through. Grant, still in his office, answered on the first ring. The voice on the other end was low, almost mechanical. "Check account activity on internal server C Delta." Something was downloaded and scrubbed an hour after Reed's video went live. Before Grant could respond, the line went dead. He immediately alerted the tech security team and began pulling logs himself. Meanwhile, Jonathan stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows in his penthouse suite, staring out at the glimmering skyline. Maria sat behind him on the couch, legs tucked under her, silently watching the shadows in the room shift with each passing car light. "It's strange," she finally said, her voice soft. "I expected worse." "You mean the public reaction?" he asked without turning. "Yes, I thought they'd tear us apart." Jonathan finally looked back. "They still might, but if they do, at least it'll be the truth they're reacting to, not some version they made up." Maria nodded slowly. She held a letter in her lap, a handwritten one she hadn't yet shown him. It had arrived hours ago, left at the concierge desk in an unmarked envelope. She unfolded it now. "The fall always begins when the crown slips. You may think you're a queen, but you're just another piece in his empire. We haven't forgotten." Maria didn't need to ask who "we" was. She suspected this had less to do with scandal and more to do with something older, something buried deep in Jonathan's past business dealings. "I got another message," she finally said, holding the note out to him. Jonathan took it, reading it under the soft lamplight. His jaw tightened. "This isn't about you anymore," he said. "It never really was." "Then who is it about?" Maria asked. Jonathan was quiet for a long moment. Then, "There was someone. Back in the early days. I thought I left him behind." The next morning, Grant stood in the server room, surrounded by techs. The file scrubbed was labeled Denver 17, one of them said. It was an archived security camera pull from the hotel gala that year. Grant's brows furrowed. How did it get back on the server? No idea. But someone accessed it using a mirrored credential. Looks like they were inside the system for less than 4 minutes. Grant made a note. Find out what else they touched, and alert legal. He walked out, dialing Jonathan. In the hotel's main kitchen, Maya stood on a stool, flour on her cheeks, helping the pastry chef press cookie cutters into the dough. Maria watched from the doorway, smiling despite the tired circles under her eyes. The small Joyce, the warm smells, her daughter's giggle, the feel of calm routine felt like a kind of rebellion against the chaos outside. Jonathan entered a moment later, phone still in hand. He glanced at Maria, then gently pulled her aside. "We have a problem." She followed him into the staff lounge. "They accessed footage from Denver. The night we met," he said. Maria's heart thudded. "Why?" "I don't know. But someone wants to twist it. Maybe make it look like something it wasn't." "Huh. It wasn't anything scandalous," she said firmly. "I took care of you, that's all." "I know," he replied. But in the wrong hands, even kindness can be weaponized. Later that day, Grant received a package delivered to the executive office. No return address. Inside was a USB drive and a note. Let's see what your legacy is really worth. Grant plugged the drive into a secure terminal. On it was a heavily edited, time-stamped video. It showed Jonathan clearly intoxicated, slumping into Maria's arms in a dim hallway. The angles made it seem intimate, misleading. At the end of the clip, a text overlay appeared. She was a maid, he was a king. Guess who ends up blamed? Grant immediately called Jonathan. They're preparing a narrative. They want to discredit you, make it look like coercion. Jonathan's voice was sharp. We'll release the original footage. All of it. Are you sure? It's not flattering. You're stumbling. Slurring. I'd rather show I was drunk than let them imply something sinister happened. Grant exhaled. All right. I'll work on the release strategy. By nightfall, the original footage was uploaded on the official hotel YouTube page with a statement. This is the unedited truth. No coercion, no scandal. Just a man, broken by a hard year, and a woman who showed kindness when no one else would. Maria's name was never spoken, but her presence was clear. The public began to rally behind them again. Comments flooded in. She helped him. That's not scandal, that's grace. Why do we tear down women for doing the right thing? Reed's lucky. Most men in his position would bury this. In a downtown bar, a man watched the video in silence. He was older, grayer now, with deep-set eyes and a knuckle tattoo of a chess piece. He sipped his whiskey and smiled. So he wants to play fair, he muttered. Let's see how long that lasts. He slid a photo out of his coat pocket a younger Jonathan, standing beside him outside a construction site 15 years ago. Old debts, unpaid loyalties, and a long memory. The man folded the photo back into his pocket. The crown always slips eventually, he said to no one. And somewhere, far above the city, Jonathan stood at the window again, unaware that the man from his past had just taken the first step out of the shadows. The following week moved like a slow storm calm in moments, but always heavy with the threat of lightning. Jonathan's video had turned public opinion partially in his favor, but it had also made him a larger target. Every movement he made now was watched, dissected. His investors were splitsome, moved by his vulnerability, others unnerved by it. He could feel the walls of corporate civility tightening like a noose. Grant entered the boardroom one morning holding a thin folder. We've traced the USB, he said without preamble. It was mailed from Detroit. The store used a fake name, cash payment, but the handwriting on the envelope matched a known alias. Jonathan looked up, waiting. Grant continued. Name's Owen Madsen. You might remember him as your first partner back when you were still renting office space in South Loop. Jonathan leaned back slowly. The name hit him like a cold gust of memory. Owen, he said. He was supposed to be in Texas. I heard he got into trouble with investors' SEC violations. Apparently he's back, Grant said. And watching. Jonathan exhaled. He was always looking for leverage. Always needed a hook into someone else's success. Maria entered then, holding Maya's hand. The girl ran toward Jonathan with a painting in her hands, giraffes again, this time in a hotel lobby. Look, she said proudly. That's you. And that's Mommy. And I'm the boss now. Jonathan smiled, crouching to her level. You've got the best office in town. Maria watched the interaction silently, warmth in her eyes, but a crease between her brows. She handed Jonathan her phone. Someone left a message on my voicemail. No number. Listen. She pressed play. A man's voice, deep and mocking. You think he's changed? You think he's clean? Ask him about the early days, about who he left behind. The message cut out there. Jonathan stiffened. He's trying to get in your head now. He already is, Maria said. I need to know if there's something you're not telling me, Jonathan. He looked at her, jaw clenched, then said, he was there when we started the first build. We were young, hungry, and reckless. Owen wanted quick wins, shortcuts. He cut corners, took bribes. When I found out, I reported him to the board and cut ties. He lost everything, swore I betrayed him. So now he's trying to ruin your second chance, Maria said. Jonathan nodded. Maria's gaze didn't waver. And ours. That evening, Jonathan called a private meeting with his legal team. Inside the soundproof conference room, The atmosphere was thick with strategy. "Owen won't stop," Jonathan said. "He's not interested in exposure, he wants chaos." One of the attorneys, a sharp-eyed woman named Lizette, nodded. "You have two options. Wait for him to make a public move, or sue for defamation and bring him into the light first." Grant added, "If you sue, you force him to respond, but you also make it a bigger story. The press will run with billionaire Sue's former partner over secret child scandal." Jonathan looked over at a photo of Maya on his desk, her crayon drawing still pinned beside it. "I don't care about the headlines," he said. "I care about protecting her." Lizette nodded. "Then we build a case. And fast." The next day, Maya stayed home. Maria didn't want her going to school with photographers beginning to show up across the street. Instead, they spent the morning baking muffins in the staff kitchen, away from the main lobby. Maya, flour-covered and humming, seemed immune to the tension, but Maria wasn't. She stared out the window, phone in hand, watching a man in a blue cap pacing across the street. Jonathan entered a few minutes later, bringing in takeout bags. "I thought we'd try the new place on Clark," he said, then paused. "Everything okay?" Maria pointed to the street. "That man's been there for over an hour. He's watching, not filming, not leaving." Jonathan glanced through the blinds. "I'll have Grant pull the security footage. We'll figure out who he is." Maria reached out, touching his arm. "You said Owen used to be your friend." "He was," Jonathan said quietly. "And I think that's what makes him dangerous." Later that afternoon, Jonathan stood in the main ballroom of the hotel, preparing for a fundraising event that had been planned long before any of this erupted. The theme was legacy and leadership, a cruel irony given his current position. He adjusted his cufflinks, glancing at his reflection in the grand mirrors. For the first time in weeks, he felt the weight of everything not as a burden but as armor. He wasn't hiding anymore. When he stepped onto the small stage to open the evening, the room hushed. Hundreds of guests, colleagues, donors, watched him. "Some of you may know me as a builder," he began, "of hotels, of brands, of teams, but recently, I've been learning how to build something far more difficult, a family." The crowd listened, not with skepticism, but with interest. He continued, "Legacy isn't just what we leave behind, it's what we fight for in the present. Sometimes, what we protect against the odds." A smattering of applause began. Then more. Maria watched from the back, arms around Maya. She could see the change in him, his voice steadier, his eyes clearer. He wasn't just defending his life now. He was rebuilding it in real time. Outside, in a darkened alley behind the hotel, Owen leaned against a car. His face was shadowed, but the glint in his eye was unmistakable. Next to him stood the man from the street blue cap, sharp smile. "He's playing the family man," Owen said, lighting a cigarette. "Let him," the other man asked. "You still want the old files?" Owen nodded. "Everything. The contractor disputes, the 2012 buyout, every corner he cut while pointing fingers at me." The man grinned. "Already working on it." Owen flicked ash into the wind. "He thinks this is about a child, about a woman. It's not. It's about what was stolen, and what I'm taking back." From above, the lights of the ballroom shimmered like stars behind glass. And inside, Jonathan Reed shook hands with guests, unaware that the past he thought buried had begun to rise, clawing toward the surface once more. The morning after the gala dawned quiet, unnervingly so. A light mist hung over the Chicago skyline, softening its edges, cloaking the city in a veil of silence. Jonathan stood in the hotel gym, the rhythmic pounding of his feet against the treadmill the only sound in the otherwise empty space. He had barely slept. Every move Owen made in the shadows stirred old guilt and old anger. And yet, even as the past circled like a hawk, Jonathan knew his focus had to remain on the present, on Maria, on Maya. Grant found him in the locker room, a manila envelope in hand. "We've got something," he said. "One of our old storage servers had files Owen tried to wipe years ago. Our IT guys restored fragments, construction invoices, correspondence. There's a clear trail of misconduct this, not yours." Jonathan toweled off, breathless. "Can we prove I wasn't involved?" "Yes. You reported the irregularities to the ethics committee at the time. We've got copies of your emails, and statements from 2 contractors who were on site back then. They're willing to speak." Jonathan exhaled, the weight on his chest loosening slightly. That's something. Grant hesitated. There's more. Someone tried to access Maya's school records yesterday. Jonathan's head snapped up. What? Private account. Fake credentials. They didn't get through. But it was a probe. A warning. Jonathan clenched his fists. He's using her to pressure me. Yes, Grant said. And he's getting bolder. Later that day, Maria was in the suite with Maya when the hotel's front desk rang her room. A woman's voice calm. Professional said a package had arrived addressed to the Reed family. Suspicious, Maria asked Grant to intercept it. What arrived wasn't a box but a sleek black envelope, unmarked, sealed with red wax. Inside was a single photograph. Maria, standing beside a 10-year-old Jonathan Reed on a construction site decades ago, something impossible. She stared at it, confused, until she turned it over. On the back, a scrawl of handwriting. You think you know him. He's lied before. Grant examined it closely. That's not you. It's someone who looks like you, maybe a relative. But why send it now? Maria's fingers trembled slightly. They want me to doubt him. They want me to pull away. Grant nodded. Divide and conquer. Jonathan arrived minutes later. He looked at the photo, then at Maria. That's not you. That's... He paused, brow furrowed. That's Corinne Alvarez. She worked summers on site. She was... Your cousin, wasn't she? Maria's face changed, memory rushing in. Corinne. She died in a car accident years ago. We lost touch after she moved. Grant made a quick note. That explains the resemblance. But it means Owen's been digging deep through family, through decades. Jonathan looked at Maria. He's trying to poison this, but I won't let him. She studied him for a long beat, then reached out and gripped his hand. Neither will I. Meanwhile, Owen sat in a high-rise apartment overlooking the lake, watching an old clip from a local news archive. A younger Jonathan, all ambition and charm, spoke about building an empire, with integrity and vision. Owen scoffed. You built it with my blueprint, he muttered. My sweat. Then you cut me out like trash. He sipped dark whiskey from a chipped glass, then opened a laptop. On the screen was a draft of an anonymous email, ready to be sent to a major news outlet. Attached were partial records, redacted invoices, and the photo he'd sent to Maria. He hovered over the send button, but paused. Not yet. First, he wanted Jonathan to squirm. He clicked, save as draft, then picked up his phone. Time to reach out to the board. That evening, Jonathan met with Claudia, the media advisor, in his office. She held a folder labeled, Preemptive Strike. I think we need to go on the offense, she said. Schedule a sit-down with a trusted journalist, one who won't sensationalize it. We lay everything out Owen, the threats, the old business fallout. You clear the air before he clouds it. Jonathan nodded slowly. It has to be someone with integrity, someone Middle America will believe. Claudia smiled. I already called in a favor. Susan Hall, Channel 7. She's tough, but fair. Set it up, Jonathan said, and tell her, nothing's off limits. Across town, Maya sat on the floor of the suite, building a castle out of toy blocks. Maria brushed her daughter's hair, her eyes drifting toward the door for the third time in 10 minutes. A nervous energy had settled over her like a shawl. Mommy, do you think we'll stay here forever? Maya asked suddenly. Maria paused, startled. What do you mean, honey? I heard one of the ladies say this isn't a real home, Maya said. That it's just a hotel. Maria wrapped her arms around Maya. Home isn't where you are. It's who you're with. And right now, we're with people who love us. Maya leaned into her, content. But Maria's heart raced. The pressure was growing, not just on Jonathan but on them all. Later that night, Jonathan sat alone on the rooftop, looking out at the city that both crowned and cursed him. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You can't fix what you broke, John. But you can still lose more. Much more. He stared at the screen, then deleted the message without responding. Behind him, Maria stepped onto the rooftop. She walked over, sat beside him, silent for a moment. You're not alone, she finally said. He nodded. I don't want to lose her. Either of you. Maria looked at him, then reached into her coat pocket. She handed him the small, tarnished necklace, the one he had found in the Denver suite all those years ago. "You said you kept this," she said, "but it was never yours to hold alone." Jonathan took it, his fingers closing around it tightly. "We hold it together now," Maria whispered. In the distance, thunder rolled across the lake, but for the first time in days, the storm inside him began to quiet, just a little, enough to breathe, enough to fight. The morning of the interview arrived cloaked in cold drizzle. Outside the Reed Grand Hotel, vans from Channel 7 lined the street, flanked by security and curious onlookers. Inside, the lobby buzzed with whispers, a nervous energy rippling through guests and staff alike. A temporary studio had been set up in the conservatory lounge. Lush plants softened the lighting, while glass walls let in muted, moody daylight. Jonathan sat in a chair at the center of the space, a simple wooden seat chosen to strip away the layers of corporate polish. No desk, no backdrop, just him. Susan Hall, a seasoned journalist known for her disarming poise, entered with a small crew. She greeted him with a firm handshake and a steady gaze. "No PR coaching?" she asked. Jonathan smiled faintly. "Just a very stubborn heart." Susan gave a nod of approval. "Let's begin." The cameras rolled. Lights glowed soft and even. A producer counted down with fingers, and Susan launched into the introduction. "Today, we sit down with Jonathan Reed, billionaire hotel magnate, philanthropist, and now, unexpectedly, father. His recent public acknowledgement of a 5-year-old daughter born from a private moment 6 years ago has captivated the nation. But behind the headlines lies a story of legacy, consequence, and redemption." Jonathan didn't flinch. He kept his gaze calm, his breath steady. "Mr. Reed," Susan began, "you've built an empire on discipline, privacy, and precision. Why come forward now, when staying silent could have shielded your brand? Because silence would have meant denying my daughter." "And I won't do that," Jonathan said. "Not again." Susan nodded. "There are those who say your coming forward was reactive, that the truth was forced by a leak. Is that accurate?" "It's true someone tried to use my past to harm me," Jonathan said. "But Maya is not a liability. She's my daughter. That's not scandal, it's a gift I didn't know I had." Susan pressed gently. "Some critics argue the mother, Maria Alvarez, used her position as hotel staff to manipulate a powerful man. What do you say to that?" Jonathan's jaw tightened. "Maria showed me more decency in one night than many in my industry have in a lifetime. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for recognition. She raised Maya with love and dignity, completely on her own. She's the bravest person I know." Susan's eyes softened. "You've also received threats. Anonymous messages, private investigators digging through your past. Can you confirm those are linked to a former associate named Owen Madsen?" Jonathan hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, he was once a partner. I exposed him for financial misconduct years ago. He blames me for his fall. Now he's trying to use my daughter, my family, as pawns in some twisted revenge. And your response?" Jonathan looked straight into the camera. "I won't be blackmailed. I won't be intimidated. And I won't let my daughter grow up in the shadow of fear. That ends now." Susan leaned in slightly. "Is this, in some ways, your reckoning?" Jonathan's voice was quiet. "It's my becoming." The interview ended. The lights dimmed. The cameras shut down. Susan rose and offered her hand again. "You meant every word," she said. "That will matter." "I hope so," Jonathan replied. Back in the suite, Maria watched the interview unfold live with Maya curled up beside her. The little girl had insisted on wearing her smart sweater for the occasion, as if somehow her outfit could help her father through the screen. When Jonathan said, "She's not a scandal, she's a gift," Maria felt her breath catch. Maya looked up. "Mommy, he said me." "Yes, baby," Maria whispered. "He meant every word." The interview went viral within hours. News anchors replayed clips with open admiration. Social media, for once, tilted toward empathy. Even public figure authors, actors, single parents retweeted the video, calling it a masterclass in vulnerability and accountability. But not everyone applauded. Owen Madsen watched from a private club, swirling a drink in his hand, his expression unreadable. A television in the corner showed the interview on loop. "That was a nice speech," said the man beside him. "Too nice." Owen's smile was slow. It's always the speeches that come before the fall. He pulled out a small flash drive and slid it across the table. Send this to the board anonymously. They'll know what to do. What's on it? The man asked. Owen's eyes gleamed. Enough to remind them who really built the foundation of Reed Enterprises and what it cost. That evening, Jonathan and Maria sat on the balcony of their suite. Maya had fallen asleep on the couch, crayon drawings still clutched in her small hands. Maria passed Jonathan a glass of wine. You did well today. He took it, sipped. It wasn't a performance. It was a confession. She leaned into his side, and it was received. He wrapped an arm around her. I keep thinking about what comes next. Not just for the company, but for us. For her. Maria was quiet for a long moment. She needs stability, and so do we. But if Owen keeps pushing, Jonathan's phone buzzed. An email. He checked it. His eyes narrowed. Maria noticed. What is it? He turned the phone so she could read the subject line. Urgent. Board to convene. Emergency session. Subject. Leadership review. He lowered the phone slowly. Owen just played his hand. Maria's breath caught. They're coming for your chair? Jonathan nodded. Tomorrow. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city lights glittered below, beautiful and uncaring. Then Maria took his hand. Then tomorrow, we fight. Not for control, but for truth. Jonathan turned to her. And for her. He glanced toward the sleeping form of their daughter, the only real legacy that ever mattered. And deep in his chest, beyond the business armor and the polished charm, a resolve took root fierce, immovable. Whatever came next, he wouldn't face it alone. The morning sun rose cold and indifferent as Jonathan walked through the marbled halls of Reed Grand toward the executive boardroom. His tailored suit fit like armor, and every click of his polished shoes echoed determination. Behind him, Grant followed closely, holding a black leather folder filled with prepared statements, timelines, and receipts the truth in ink and paper. Inside the boardroom, the air was chilled not by temperature but by tension. 12 seats were filled, each by a figure of influence and old money. At the head of the table, Chairman Wesley, a stoic man in his 70s, adjusted his glasses and nodded at Jonathan as he entered, but there was no warmth in the gesture. Mr. Reed, Wesley began, his voice calm and precise. This emergency session has been convened to address matters of leadership stability, fiduciary conduct, and reputational risk. Your recent public disclosures, while personally compelling, have raised concerns about the future of Reed Enterprises. Jonathan sat. I understand. Beside Wesley sat Elaine Draper, one of the oldest board members and a silent ally of Owen's, though she never declared it. It is not about morality, she said sharply. It is about perception. We're not just building hotels, we're building trust. Jonathan met her gaze. Then let's talk about trust. Grant handed out folders to each board member. These documents detail the misconduct of Mr. Owen Madsen, dating back to the founding years. Embezzlement, undisclosed partnerships, attempts to sabotage internal audits. Jonathan continued. I exposed him. I did the right thing. And now, he's retaliating by attacking my family, my integrity, and this company. Wesley flipped through the pages, pausing on a red-marked invoice. This was buried. Yes, Jonathan said, because at the time, I thought protecting the brand meant protecting silence. That was a mistake. I've spent the last 6 years trying to do better, not just as a CEO, but as a man. Another board member, a woman named Rena Howard, leaned forward. And this child, Maya, you confirm she is your daughter? Jonathan didn't hesitate. Yes, she is. And her mother was a hotel employee, Elaine interjected. That brings legal and ethical complications. Jonathan leaned forward. Maria Alvarez is a woman who helped me in a moment of weakness, expecting nothing in return. She's raised Maya with strength and grace, never asking for a penny from me. If you see that as a complication, you're not looking at people, you're looking at headlines. A silence fell over the room. Wesley closed his folder. This board is tasked with safeguarding legacy. Your personal affairs have become inseparable from the company's identity. I know, Jonathan said, and I believe that's why I must remain in this chair. Because legacy isn't just about profits. It's about courage, responsibility, Ownership. I'm owning every part of my story. Can any of you say the same? No one answered. After a pause, Wesley spoke. We will deliberate in private. You'll be informed of our decision by noon. Jonathan rose. Thank you for your time. Outside the boardroom, Maria waited with Maya in a quiet lounge. The girl sat on a couch, coloring peacefully, unaware of the weight her existence now carried in executive hands. Maria stood as Jonathan approached. How did it go? She asked. They listened, he said. That's all I could ask for. She nodded, taking his hand. Whatever they decide. We stand, he said, finishing her sentence. At exactly 11:58 a.m., Jonathan received the call. Wesley's voice was measured. The board has voted, he said. 7 in favor of your continued leadership, 5 against. Jonathan exhaled, relief coursing through him like warmth in winter. Thank you. Don't thank us, Wesley replied. Just lead. The relief was short-lived. That afternoon, news broke of another leak. A heavily edited audio file was posted online. Jonathan's voice, taken from years ago, during a heated exchange with Owen. In it, he said the words, I'll bury this if it means protecting what we've built. No one needs to know. Taken out of context, the phrase sounded damning. Social media erupted. What was buried? Was he hiding more than a child? Reed built his empire on secrets. Jonathan paced his office as Grant confirmed the file's release. It was Owen. Had to be. Most likely, Grant said. But the timing is brutal. Right after the vote. Claudia stormed in next, phone in hand. I'm fielding dozens of press requests. We need a statement now. Maria entered then, her face pale. It's trending, she said. People are spinning it, saying you manipulated the board, that the vote was rigged. Jonathan stopped. Then slowly, he walked to his desk, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a small recorder, his private archive. That tape, he said. It came from the day I found out Owen had been bribing city officials. I was telling him I'd bury the story from the press to buy time and report it quietly to the board. Grant blinked. You have the full tape? Jonathan nodded. Uncut. Context included. Claudia grabbed the recorder. Then we go again. One more round. One more interview. No, Jonathan said. Not another interview. A live town hall. No edits, no cuts, just truth. That night, the ballroom was transformed into a live stream set. Employees, media, and guests filled the room. At center stage, Jonathan stood under lights not as a mogul, but as a man reclaiming his truth. He played the full tape, every word, the context clear, the motives exposed. Then he turned to the crowd. I'm not proud of every moment in my past, but I've never stopped trying to do right by the people who trusted me. That includes all of you. And it especially includes the 2 people who changed my life the most, Maria and Maya. From the crowd, Maria watched with tears in her eyes. Beside her, Maya clapped, entirely unaware of the stakes, but completely certain of the man on stage. For once, the applause that followed wasn't just polite. It was thunderous, earnest, and earned. Somewhere in the darkness, Owen watched from a distance, and for the first time, he realized something chilling. Jonathan Reed wasn't playing defense anymore. He was building forward, block by block, truth by truth, a legacy that no lie could undo. The morning after the town hall, the hotel lobby felt different. Employees greeted Jonathan with nods of respect that lingered longer than usual. Guests smiled as he passed, some offering quiet encouragement. He noticed it all subtle but powerful. Not admiration for a man who'd held power, but for one who had chosen honesty over self-preservation. In the executive suite, Maria stood by the window, watching Maya chase a housekeeping cart, giggling. The girl wore her father's hotel badge on a lanyard like a trophy. Maria smiled, but her heart felt tight with unease. The storm might have passed in public, but Owen was still out there and silent enemies were often the most dangerous. Jonathan joined her at the window, 2 cups of coffee in hand. It's almost too quiet, he said. She nodded. Owen won't disappear that easily. He won't, Jonathan agreed, and we have to stay ahead of him. A soft knock came at the door. Grant entered, holding a slim folder and his phone. We've got something, he said. Our cybersecurity team traced the metadata from the leaked audio. The file passed through an encrypted server located in Nevada. It's linked to a shell corporation, Nova Shade Holdings. Jonathan frowned. Never heard of them. Grant's expression darkened. They were one of the private bidders for the Rosewood property last year. We beat them in the final round. Maria looked between them. So Owen's not working alone. No, Grant said. We believe Nova Shade is financing him, and they're planning to make a move tonight. Jonathan tensed. What kind of move? Grant slid the folder across the table. Inside was a leaked memo. Nova Shade had scheduled a press event in Las Vegas to unveil a luxury resort plan. The location? The very site of Jonathan's next development, the Horizon Project. It was meant to be a community-forward initiative, a symbol of redemption after years of expansionist branding. If Nova Shade succeeded in swaying public support with Owen's help, they could derail the entire plan. They're calling it New Horizons, Grant said bitterly. Jonathan's hands curled into fists. That name was ours. Maria leaned forward. Then you have to go. Confront them directly. I will, Jonathan said. But not as the CEO of Reed Enterprises. Grant blinked. What then? Jonathan looked him dead in the eye. As a man whose legacy is being stolen. By sunset, Jonathan stood in the heart of Las Vegas, a city that sparkled with excess and deception. The Nova Shade event was already underway at a sleek downtown venue, all chrome and LED lights. A banner reading, Introducing New Horizons, the future of hospitality hung above the entry. Dressed in simple slacks and a black shirt, Jonathan walked past cameras with a quiet intensity that made security hesitate. Inside, a glossy stage had been erected, and at the center of it stood Owen Madsen, arms outstretched, basking in the spotlight. He didn't see Jonathan until he was halfway through his speech. And for years, Owen said, our voices were silenced by monopolies. But tonight, we offer a real choice of future untethered from lies and legacy debt. Laughter from the crowd. Applause. Then silence. Jonathan stepped up onto the stage without invitation, flanked by two Reed Enterprises shareholders who had flown in from Chicago. Your future, he said into the microphone, is built on theft. Gasps. Murmurs. Owen's face tightened. Jonathan, you weren't invited. I don't need an invitation to defend the truth, Jonathan said, especially not from a man who forged documents and manipulated public trust. He turned to the crowd. Nova Shade doesn't own this project. They're using stolen materials blueprints, environmental surveys, even community outreach proposals, all developed under my team, all copyrighted. A lawyer from Reed Enterprises stepped forward, handing out copies of cease and desist letters. This is a hostile takeover of vision, Jonathan continued. And if you back this, you're backing fraud. Owen stepped forward, eyes burning. You abandoned your people. You built glass towers while the rest of us sank. I built what I believed in, Jonathan said, voice steady. But I also listened. I learned. And I started again with heart, not ego. That's something you never did. A hush fell over the room. Investors shifted uncomfortably. Some began walking out. Owen's jaw clenched. This isn't over. Jonathan stepped closer. It never had to be a war, Owen. You chose this path, but I won't let you drag Maya into your mess. That little girl is the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I won't let her name be weaponized. Owen said nothing. His silence was louder than any insult. Back in Chicago, Maria sat with Maya, watching the live feed as Jonathan stood firm on the stage. Tears shimmered in her eyes. He's not just protecting himself, she whispered. He's protecting us. By midnight, Nova Shade's board had issued a statement distancing themselves from Owen Madsen. The press event unraveled. Legal teams from both sides prepared for a brutal battle. But one thing was clear: Jonathan had won the public war. Again, he returned to Chicago the next morning, weary but unbroken. As he stepped into the hotel lobby, the staff erupted into spontaneous applause. Maria and Maya waited for him near the fountain. Maya ran into his arms without hesitation. Did you beat the bad guys, Daddy? He knelt, hugging her tight. No, sweetheart. I reminded them who we are. Maria smiled as he rose and met her eyes. You did more than that. You changed the story. Jonathan looked around, at the faces that watched him with belief, not obligation, and for the first time, he felt it not pressure. Not fear, but peace. The kind that comes when you stop running from who you were and start walking toward who you choose to be. And with Maya's hand in one of his, and Maria's in the other, he knew this fight, no matter how long it lasted, was worth every breath. 2 days after the Las Vegas confrontation, Chicago bathed in a strange kind of autumn sunlight, golden but cold. Inside the Reed Grand Hotel, the lobby returned to its quiet rhythm. Guests came and went, employees smiled politely, and the tension that had once hovered like smog began to lift. But for Jonathan, peace was still a visitor, not a resident. He stood in his office, overlooking Michigan Avenue, reviewing contracts for the Horizon Project's relaunch. Every dotted line now required extra scrutiny, every signature double-checked. Owen's sabotage had taught him never to mistake progress for permanence. Maria entered quietly, holding a padded envelope. This came through the back delivery channel. No return address. Jonathan took it with a frown. Inside was a faded newspaper clipping, dated 19 years ago. The headline read, "Construction site fire leaves 2 dead. Cause still unknown." Beneath it, a grainy photograph. A younger Jonathan, barely in his 20s, standing behind yellow tape, his face half-shadowed. Jonathan's hand trembled slightly. "Where did this come from?" Maria shook her head. "There's a note inside." He unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was jagged, rushed. "How long before they learn what really happened? How long can you bury fire under stone?" Jonathan sank into his chair. He hadn't seen this article in years, hadn't thought about that night in nearly 2 decades. It was before his first hotel, before the IPO, before Reed Enterprises had become a household name. Maria sat across from him. "What is this?" He looked at her, jaw tight. "When I was 26, I was overseeing a renovation site for a luxury condo project on the south side. One night, after hours, a fire broke out. 2 workers died. The cause was ruled electrical, but there were whispers about missing safety logs, rushed permits. Were you involved?" Jonathan hesitated. "Not directly, but I was there. Earlier that night, I argued with the site manager about pushing through a concrete pour despite warning signs. I walked away, angry. Hours later, the fire started." Maria's eyes searched his. "Did you cover it up?" "No," he said firmly. "But I didn't come forward either. The investigators never asked. And I didn't volunteer. I was scared. Young. I told myself it wouldn't matter." "But it does," Maria said softly. "Someone wants to use it now." Jonathan nodded, voice low. "Owen knows. He's digging deeper. And this is his next move." Across town, Owen sat in a cafe beneath a new name, new ID, but his eyes burned with the same fire. He tapped the screen of his phone, watching a digital scan of the newspaper clipping as he sipped black coffee. He spoke to the man across from him, a freelance journalist with a reputation for bringing down giants. "It's all there," Owen said. "He let 2 men die. The records were scrubbed, but enough whispers remain. Follow the thread. You'll find someone ready to talk." The journalist raised an eyebrow. "Why now?" Owen leaned back, satisfied. "Because gods fall hardest when they think they've won." That evening, Grant entered Jonathan's office, holding his own copy of the envelope. "It's spreading. 3 media outlets contacted us within the last hour, asking about the fire." Jonathan stood slowly. "Do we deny it?" "No," Grant said. "Not this time." Jonathan nodded. "Then we get ahead of it." He turned to Maria. "I need to visit the families of those men, before they read my name in the news, before they think I ran from it." Maria touched his arm. "You're not that young man anymore." Jonathan looked down, but his mistakes still echo. The next morning, he and Grant drove south to the modest suburb where the family of one of the victims still lived. The widow, Mrs. Callahan, was in her 70s now, white hair pinned neatly, hands calloused from years of work. She opened the door, surprised but composed. "I remember you," she said. "You were the one in the hard hat, always shouting orders." Jonathan bowed his head. "I came to say I'm sorry. And to tell you the truth, I should have spoken up years ago." She led them inside, offered tea, then sat across from them without emotion. "We always knew it wasn't just faulty wiring, but no one wanted a scandal. They wanted quiet money and quiet grief." Jonathan swallowed hard. If you ever decide to speak publicly, I'll support you. I'll back your account, and I'll help with whatever you need. Mrs. Callahan studied him for a long moment. We lost more than a provider. We lost the truth. And nothing you give will change that. But maybe your daughter won't have to carry your silence. When they left the house, Jonathan's face was drawn but resolute. She's right, he said to Grant. Maya deserves a father who doesn't hide. Grant nodded. Then we write it ourselves. The full story. We tell it before Owen weaponizes it. Back at the hotel, Maria watched Maya play in the courtyard, leaves swirling around her feet. The girl was pretending to be a weather witch, chasing the wind. Jonathan approached quietly, stood beside Maria, eyes still shadowed. She'll hear things soon, he said. Things I never meant for her to know. Maria glanced up. Then, make sure she hears it from you first. That night, Jonathan sat with Maya on the edge of her bed, holding one of her picture books in his lap. Sweetheart, he said gently, can I tell you a story? About when I was younger? Maya blinked up at him, curious. Was it before you had a hotel? Yes, he said. It was before I knew who I was supposed to be. And so he began not with numbers or timelines, but with feelings, with fear, with mistakes, and with how even grown-ups have to learn how to be brave. Maria watched from the doorway, heart full, knowing that this moment of truth was more powerful than any press release. The past had knocked. Jonathan had opened the door. And in doing so, he'd started writing a new chapter not in ink, but in the honesty only a father could give. The following day, headlines shifted. Not with accusations or leaks, but with a confession. Jonathan Reed had published a personal letter to the press and posted it on the official Reed Enterprises website titled, What I Should Have Said 19 Years Ago. The tone was clear, direct, unpolished. There were no PR filters, no spin, just truth. In the letter, Jonathan detailed the night of the fire, his role in the site's mismanagement, and his failure to speak up. He named the workers who died, expressed remorse, and explained the steps he had since taken to support safety in his company's construction practices. He ended with a pledge to fund a memorial scholarship in the names of the victims and to open an independent investigation into every early project under his name. Within hours, the internet exploded, but not with outrage. The response was unexpectedly human. Comments poured in, some critical, many compassionate. People wrote about their own regrets, their buried mistakes, the relief of seeing someone in power admit fault without being forced. Maria sat in the hotel lounge, scrolling through the public responses with tears quietly gathering. Maya played at her feet with toy animals, oblivious to the way her father's truth was reshaping public memory. Jonathan walked in, tired but calm. The world didn't end, he said, sinking into the armchair beside her. No, Maria said softly. You just proved it could start over. He leaned forward, clasping his hands. Owen hasn't responded. He's too quiet. That worries me. He's losing his grip, Maria replied. That scares men like him. Across town, Owen wasn't just quiet, was unraveling. In a rented apartment filled with wine bottles and unopened mail, he stared at the news on his laptop. Jonathan's letter glared back at him. Damn you, he muttered. You turned the blade and still got applause. His phone buzzed. An anonymous number. He answered. A voice, masked and clinical, spoke. You're compromised. We'll proceed without you. Owen sat up. What? Number, I'm still your inside man? Your name's toxic. We're cleaning house. The line went dead. Owen hurled the phone across the room. At Reed Enterprises, Grant received notice that a high-level federal compliance audit had been requested for the Horizon project. A surprise visit. No warrants yet, just routine procedure. But they all knew it wasn't random. They're trying to stall us, Jonathan said. If we can't break ground, our funding's at risk. Claudia entered with a steely look. There's a meeting of key investors tonight. A private one. They're nervous about the project's future. Jonathan nodded. Set it up. I'll be there. No, Claudia said. They want Maria too. Maria froze. Me? You're part of this story now, Claudia said. They want to hear from the woman who raised the daughter of the man they're backing. They want to see what kind of legacy they're really investing in. Maria glanced at Jonathan, uncertain. He touched her hand. You don't have to go. She shook her head. I want to. That evening, The meeting took place in a penthouse conference suite overlooking the city. 12 investors sat around a round table diverse in age, background, and skepticism. Jonathan spoke first, laying out numbers, plans, and legal reinforcements to counter the audit threat. Then, he stepped aside, and Maria stood. She was not polished, not rehearsed. She wore a simple navy dress, her hands slightly trembling, but her voice was steady. "I'm not a businesswoman," she began. "I'm a housekeeper, a mother. For years, I cleaned rooms in this very building. I raised my daughter behind staff elevators, in hallways no one important ever walked. She looked around the room. "And now I'm standing here because truth found its way to the surface. Not to bring anyone down, but to ask something bigger. What does legacy really mean to you?" The room was silent. "My daughter," Maria said, voice trembling now, "is not a scandal. She's not a risk. She's the reason this company deserves to grow because it's finally run by someone who chose to tell the truth even when it hurt." One of the older investors, a black man named Mr. Harris, leaned back and said, "Thank you, Miss Alvarez. That was needed." Another nodded. "I've seen a lot of numbers, but that felt like equity." The meeting ended not with promises, but with sincerity. Later that night, Jonathan and Maria returned to the suite. Maya was asleep on the couch again, a blanket draped over her shoulders, her sketchbook open to a new drawing a tall building with 3 stick figures holding hands on the roof. One wore a dress, one wore a suit, one had curls and a wide smile. Jonathan knelt beside the sketch. "She's telling our story." Maria joined him. "She sees things we're just learning to believe." They sat on the floor, watching her breathe. Outside, the city pulsed with light and noise. But inside, something rare had taken root: quiet certainty. Owen would likely strike again. The audits would continue. But truth had momentum now. And love, quiet, steady, deeply earned, was becoming their strongest defense. Morning arrived in Chicago with low clouds and a soft drizzle. But inside the Reed Grand, light streamed through the conservatory lounge. Jonathan stood beside the tall windows, cups of hot chocolate on the table. Maya and Grant played tic-tac-toe on the floor, laughter echoing. Across the room, Maria watched quietly, warmth in her eyes. For a moment, despite the ongoing challenges, they felt anchored together. The board had returned early from their retreat. Horizon Project funding was reinstated, audit flagged as routine but with oversight. Investors had spoken. When truth binds leadership, trust can rebuild faster than profit margins. That evening's unity was more than symbolic, it was tactical. Jonathan cleared his throat. "Everyone should know my dad always said, buildings don't matter if the people within them don't feel safe. Today, we start again." He pushed a stack of papers toward Grant. "Let's draft the safety protocol site, by-site reviews, third-party inspectors, family visits to project sites. I want Maria there." Grant nodded. "Already on it." Maya skidded toward Maria. "Mommy, look." She held up her sketch. A playground atop a building, kids running, Jonathan waving. Maria smiled. "That's our horizon, sweetheart." Jonathan caught Haley smiling and took her hand. "She's dreaming bigger than we are." Maria touched her daughter's curls. "That's good." A week later, the family attended a community groundbreaking for Horizon Phase 1, held at a former brownfield near Lake Michigan. Neighbors, local leaders, school teachers, and families gathered under a bright tent. A banner read Horizon, a future built together. Jonathan spoke first. He wore jeans and a blue blazer, deliberately casual. "This isn't just a building, it's a promise to create homes, spaces, opportunity, and to do it with transparency. We invite the families of those lost in past accidents to join our journey. We build in their honor." Maria stood with Maya by his side. After the speech, Julia Callahan, widow of the first worker Jonathan, apologized to step to the podium. When a man admits his wrongs and works to right them, that's bravery. That's what we're celebrating today. The crowd cheered. Maria squeezed Jonathan's hand. Afterward, children chased bubbles near the construction site, while volunteers handed out modest boxed lunches. Maria served cookies in the community tent. Maya helped pass them out. Jonathan toured the site, wearing a hard hat and hugging neighbors. Owen's sabotage had turned into opportunity. The board, the community, the staff, they saw the man behind the empire. And he was present, visible, rooted. Later that afternoon, Jonathan led Maria and Maya into a small on-site trailer now reframed as the Horizon home. He opened the door. Inside, small couches, colored prints on walls, a photo of Maya in construction boots. A soft lamp glowed in the corner. Maya gasped. "Daddy made me a clubhouse." Maria hugged Jonathan. "It's beautiful. So every time someone walks in," he said gently to Maria, "they'll see why we do this." Maria looked at the photo. "You turned apology into action." He kissed her forehead. But that evening, in Owen's secret den, cameras captured his reaction. He watched Julia's speech. His face darkened. "No," he whispered. "This isn't about you, Reed." He ripped a piece of paper. Internal memo, environmental assessment, accelerated review. If he builds integrity faster than I can tear it, I'll lose everything. He grabbed a pen and scrawled, Stage 2. On the desk lay the Nova Shade plan map to a rival site 3 miles north. He pressed, send. That night, back at the hotel, Maria tucked Maya into bed. The girl looked out at the city lights. "Daddy's building a playground in the sky," she whispered. Maria kissed her forehead. "The ground, baby. On the ground." Maya yawned. "Still sky high." Closing the door, Maria found Jonathan waiting outside. Her eyes were soft, but cautious. He hugged her. "Did we do okay?" he asked. "We did more than okay," she said. "We built trust." But her voice faltered. "Owen isn't done." He nodded. "I know." Over the next days, Ivan, a well-liked brownfield specialist, visited each Horizon site. Whispers spread quickly. People saw smiles instead of boardrooms, hope instead of paperwork. Jonathan demonstrated. Visible leadership resonates. But inside corporate channels, Owen moved next. A subtle smear campaign, citing environmental concerns, sold fuel tanks, untested soils, safety culture, in question. Media outlets resurrected the fire story, the scandal. The audits were expanded, subpoenas issued. On a gray Friday afternoon, Maria entered Jonathan's office unannounced. She found him staring at a framed photo, him in a hard hat, Maya at his shoulder. She gently traced the frame, tears in her eyes. He turned. "They're coming at Horizon now." She sat. "What do we do?" Jonathan locked the photo. "We fight, with the truth we've built." Maria's jaw set, nodding. "Then let's build." That evening, Jonathan held a press conference at the Horizon site. Rain drizzled. He stood under a canopy. Reporters gathered. Lights floored his silhouette. He spoke. "Yes, there are audits, subpoenas, questions. I welcome them, because we're committed to learning, testing, auditing, and most of all, listening. If we did it wrong, we'll own it, fix it, and rebuild. But if you want fear, you'll find none here." The rain picked up, but back straightened. Cameras stayed rolling. Questions still came, but he answered. Openly. Without hesitation. When he stepped off the podium, Maria waited, umbrella in hand. She pulled him in. He smiled, drenched, eyes steady. "Our legacy," she whispered, "is worth the storm." He pressed her hand. "We'll build in the rain if we have to." That night, back in their suite, Maya slept between them. The rain tapped gently. Jonathan held Maria's hand. "We're parents. We're leaders. We're a team." Maria leaned her head on his shoulder. And no storm lasts forever. Outside, the storm continued, but inside, a family weathered it together. Tomorrow, they'd face subpoenas, headlines, rival projects. But tonight, they held the ground they'd earned on brick of truth, one heartbeat at a time. The subpoenas arrived with the crisp bite of bureaucracy delivered by stern faces, sealed with state insignia, and stamped with urgency. Reed Enterprises' legal department had braced for it, but the weight still landed heavily. Horizon's future, once secured with sweat and community faith, now hung in a delicate balance, suspended by the outcome of a state-level environmental investigation and allegations of historic negligence. Jonathan stood at the head of the war room, where legal advisors and PR strategists gathered around a long table. Maps of the construction zones were pinned to corkboards. A projector showed spreadsheets, historical permits, environmental reviews all glowing in sterile blues and grays. Maria sat beside him, holding a file of her own letters from Horizon's future tenants, most of them single mothers, veterans, or retirees who'd believed in the project. Jonathan spoke calmly. We cooperate fully, no stalling, no shielding. If there's even a hairline crack in our past compliance, I want it exposed and addressed. No cover-ups. Grant cleared his throat. We've traced the audit's origin. It didn't come from the usual agencies. It was pushed from a private report Nova Shade's Environmental Consulting Division. Jonathan clenched his jaw. Owen. Yes, Grant confirmed. He's trying to make the people doubt what they already believe. Maria leaned forward. Then we show them the truth again. In person. That afternoon, Jonathan and Maria made a quiet visit to the Lakeview Community Center, where Horizon's future tenants had begun organizing. Dozens of families gathered in a circle of folding chairs, faces worn by work but lit by hope. A young man with a veteran's pin on his collar stood first. We heard about the subpoenas, he said. They trying to shut this down? Jonathan met his eyes. They're trying to slow it, distract us, but they're not stopping it, and I won't either. A woman with 2 children nodded. You showed up when no one else did. That means something. We're not walking away. Maria opened her folder, passing out photocopies of their letters. Each of you is the reason we fight. We'll publish these stories. We'll put faces behind the project. That night, social media lit up with images of those families. Videos of Maria speaking, her voice clear and determined, were shared thousands of times. News anchors called her the quiet conscience behind Horizon. Public sentiment surged again, not just in support of Jonathan, but for the community standing with him. Owen watched from his penthouse suite in silence. The smear campaign wasn't sticking. His legal allies were pulling back. And now, even Nova Shade had gone quiet, unwilling to tie themselves to what was starting to look like a personal vendetta. He paced. The only thing left was leverage. He opened an old folder inside, a copy of Maria's employment file from 5 years ago. There, tucked in the margins, was the security report from the night of Jonathan's infamous drunken collapse. A camera log. A note. One line stood out. Housekeeper Maria Alvarez assisted subject to his room at 2:14 a.m. Surveillance footage corrupted. He smiled. Back in Chicago, Maria sat at her small kitchen table, flipping through Maya's art folder. But something in her mind itched. A memory faint, blurred by time and fear. The night 6 years ago. The hallway. Jonathan collapsing into her arms. The necklace he wore. She had never spoken of it. Never explained why she helped him. She just had, quietly, without asking for thanks, or fearing what might follow. But now, with the project under siege, and Owen unpredictable, she felt something inside her, shifting. She opened her drawer and pulled out an old envelope. Inside it, still wrapped in tissue, was a necklace with a small eagle emblem. Jonathan's. She had found it on the hotel bed after putting him to sleep. She had meant to return it, but life, fear, and pride had delayed her. She brought it to Jonathan that night. He turned the necklace over in his hand, eyes softening. I forgot I ever lost this. She looked at him. That night, I never told anyone. I didn't want you to think I expected something. I didn't even think we'd ever meet again. He touched her hand. You protected me, when I didn't even know I needed it. She hesitated. Owen may have that report. If he spins it, if he twists it. Jonathan's voice grew calm. Then we get ahead of him, just like last time. The next morning, Maria and Jonathan appeared in a pre-recorded interview aired nationwide. It was raw, intimate. They told their story, the hotel, the coincidence, the truth of Maya's birth. There was no scandal, only humanity. And when Maria revealed the necklace, Jonathan took it and placed it around Maya's neck on camera. She is the best thing that's ever happened to me, he said. Not because of power or image, but because she reminded me who I could still become. The interview exploded across media. Viewers praised the candor. Headlines called it the redemption of a legacy. Owen's final play had failed before it was made. By week's end, the state cleared Horizon of wrongdoing. Permits reinstated, construction resumed, and for the first time in months, the noise began to fade. Maria stood at the site's edge, hard hat in hand, watching crews pour new foundation. Jonathan joined her. "We didn't just build through storms," he said. "We rewrote the blueprint." She nodded. "And now we lay the real groundwork." In the distance, Maya skipped between cones, drawing with chalk on the fresh pavement. Her laughter soared over steel and concrete. It was the sound of something enduring hope, not shouted, but lived. And as the sun dipped behind the cranes, casting long shadows over the rising beams, Jonathan wrapped an arm around Maria and whispered, "This is just the beginning." 6 months later, Horizon Phase 1 stood proud against the Chicago skyline, a seamless blend of modern architecture and neighborhood spirit. It wasn't just a building. It was a message carved into steel and stone. Truth builds taller than lies ever could. The grand opening drew local media, city officials, families, and employees who had labored over every detail. A large blue banner fluttered above the main entrance. "Welcome home." Maria stood on the front steps with Maya holding her hand. The little girl wore a pale yellow dress with tiny sunflowers and a matching bow in her hair. Jonathan stood beside them in a crisp gray suit, his expression calm but moved. He held a pair of ceremonial scissors, but the honor of cutting the ribbon went to Maya. "You built it, Daddy," she said proudly, "but I live here first." The crowd laughed and applauded as Maya snipped the ribbon. Flashbulbs popped. Applause echoed down the boulevard. Jonathan turned to the podium. "When we started this project, we were building apartments. Today, we're opening homes. Homes rooted in honesty, protected by transparency, and grown from forgiveness." He gestured toward Maria, "And none of this would have stood without the quiet strength of one woman who reminded us that every legacy begins at home." Maria was invited to speak next. She wore a navy blouse and a soft pearl necklace, a quiet confidence in her voice. "This place isn't just made of concrete and glass. It's made of people who refuse to let the past define the future. My daughter may not understand politics or architecture, but she knows kindness when she sees it. And thanks to all of you, she sees it every day." As they stepped away from the stage, city council members shook their hands. Community leaders hugged them. And for the first time in a long while, there were no whispers, no doubt, just gratitude. Later that evening, the newly built rooftop garden opened to a golden sunset. Raised planters brimmed with herbs, small fruit trees, and wildflowers. Families picnicked on benches while soft jazz played through hidden speakers. Jonathan poured 2 glasses of sparkling cider and handed one to Maria. They clinked glasses, standing beside the iron railing as Maya giggled nearby with 2 other children, chasing paper butterflies in the warm breeze. "It still feels surreal," Jonathan admitted. Maria smiled. "You always said buildings are just walls unless they breathe. This one breathes." He looked at her. "I used to think power came from ownership, but now I think it comes from care." She nodded. "You didn't just rebuild a project, you rebuilt yourself." He looked toward Maya, now drawing something in chalk on the rooftop floor. When he reached her, she smiled and showed him. It was a drawing of 3 figures, a tall man, a woman with curly hair, and a little girl between them, all holding hands under a banner that read, "Home." He knelt beside her. "Can I keep this one?" Maya giggled. "It's for your office, so everyone knows who your boss is." As night descended, lanterns flickered to life around the rooftop. Families slowly filtered downstairs, leaving the Reed family in quiet peace under the stars. Grant approached with a folded envelope. "This arrived today, from the board." Jonathan opened it. Inside was a simple card with a single line. "Your position is not just secure, it's honored." Beneath was a signature from every board member, even those who had once doubted him. He looked up, tears pricking his eyes. It wasn't supposed to end this way. Maria stepped beside him. Maybe it didn't end. Maybe it just began. Jonathan held her hand, pulling her close. "I spent so long hiding from the truth, and somehow, it gave me everything I never dared to want." She rested her head against his chest. "And all you had to do was open the door." Nearby, Maya began humming a tune, something soft, invented, timeless. A song only a child could compose. Jonathan and Maria stood still, letting it wash over them. In the days that followed, the story of Horizon traveled far. It became a model for transparency and community engagement. Schools studied its blueprints, not just for design, but for its social impact. Families moved in, bringing laughter, new traditions, and fresh hopes. Maria continued to work with the Horizon Community Board, advocating for resources and programs. Jonathan began mentoring young entrepreneurs who had once been overlooked, especially those from backgrounds like Maria's. Their relationship, once defined by silence and mystery, now pulsed with clarity and mutual purpose. Love had not been dramatic or sudden, it had been slow, steady, and earned. As spring turned to summer, Maya began first grade. On her first day, Jonathan knelt to fix her shoelaces. "Be brave," he whispered. She kissed his cheek. "I'll be like Mommy." Jonathan watched her disappear through the school doors, backpack bouncing. He turned to Maria, who slipped her arm through his. "She's going to build bigger things than we ever dreamed," he said. Maria smiled. "And she'll know exactly where her roots are." They walked down the sidewalk, hand in hand, toward the Horizon Tower that now gleamed in morning light. Behind them, the echoes of fear, betrayal, and shame had quieted. Ahead of them, a skyline not just of steel but of stories reclaimed, of families healed, and of a legacy grounded in something stronger than wealth, truth, community, and enduring love.